Hi and welcome to The Courageous Collective, the podcast where we celebrate diverse women who dare to do things differently. I'm Rupa Baradva, a copywriter and communication specialist. I work with women entrepreneurs to help them get clear on their brand messaging, and I help them become more visible to their target customers using PR.
And I'm Vardeep Edwards, founder of The Branding Fox, a design consultancy that supports women in business with their branding and design needs. After working in corporate roles, we both took the leap into self-employment and created our own businesses where our skills and experience could really shine. But something we both noticed was the lack of women that looked like us at events, on speaker panels, and in the media.
Which is why we created the Courageous Collective podcast. This is our platform to celebrate and champion diverse women who are smashing it in their businesses. In each episode, we speak to a female founder about the story behind their business. We explore their inspirations, the challenges they faced and how they've dealt with them. And we talk about what they're yet to achieve.
Welcome to the Courageous Collective and enjoy today's episode.
Hello, we're back with a new series of the Courageous Collective podcast. Welcome to Series 2. We're thrilled to be back. And we know it's been a while since we've recorded a new episode, so we thought we'd kick things off by sharing a little bit more about ourselves, who we are, and why we've created this podcast. So I'll kick things off. Hello, I'm Rupa. I'm a comms professional and copywriter. I've worked for big companies throughout my career. But last February, in fact, I took the leap and became fully self-employed. So I've been running my consultancy for just over a year now, which is crazy because, it still feels very new to me. So what do? I work with small businesses to help them get clear and consistent with their marketing and content. And I also work with corporates on writing projects too. So over to you, Vardeep.
Yep, hi. So I'm Vardeep and I'm founder of The Branding Fox. After leaving my last full-time job with no backup plan, I've been working for myself now for over 17 years. I now work with women business founders and I help them create standout and memorable brands. So, as Rupa said, why did we create this podcast? After Rupa and I worked together on a client project, we found that we had lots in common. In particular, a passion to support women of colour like ourselves who are creative business founders. There are very few women like us on podcasts, speaking at events, and promoting themselves in the media. So we set about changing that by creating this podcast.
So in season 1, if you haven't already listened, please go back and have a listen because we spoke to 7 different women who shared their stories behind their businesses. And our conversations revealed similar themes that just kept coming up time and time again, which is why in this season, we will be bringing you even more episodes. Alongside our interviews with incredible women, we are going to start recording episodes which focus on a particular theme. We'll share our thoughts, our experience, our advice. And the main reason for this is we want to reassure you that you're not alone. Welcome. Let's get started.
Yeah, absolutely. And this podcast is about helping you feel more courageous in running your business. And we really hope our themed episodes will help you to do this. So let's get cracking with today's topic, which is all about resilience. We decided to start with resilience, given that we're still at the start of the year. And it can be a tricky time for a lot of people, including myself. So what is resilience? Rupa, what would you say is your definition of what resilience is?
Yeah, it's a really good topic to begin with, I think. And we, in kind of preparation for this episode, we've done quite a lot of reading and kind of looking into it. But I think for me, resilience is a skill that can be developed over time. So it's not necessarily something you're born with. I think it's something that develops as you experience life. For me, it's about having an unwavering ability to overcome challenges, whether that's unexpected or expected challenges. I think, there's this researcher that I found quite a lot about, she talks a lot about resilience, and she has this great quote, which is around resilience enables you to overcome all kinds of challenges. It enables you to thrive, not just survive. And I love that because I think sometimes when we think about challenges, we think about them always in a negative light. And actually, if we flip that thinking and actually think about the positive experience and the learning that a challenge can bring, it can actually enable you to thrive. So yeah, maybe it's something we can unpack a bit later, but that's what I feel is a good starting point of what resilience is. What about you, Vardeep? What does it mean to you?
Yeah, no, I absolutely love that analogy about thriving rather than surviving, because I do think it's got a bit of a negative connotation sometimes. And yeah, for me, I think it's about how you deal with any setbacks, and I'll put it in quote marks, failures or rejection, because I think it's to do with how you frame those situations. And yeah, the whole thing of thriving, not surviving, I think it's not about having to be strong all the time. It's more about finding the skills to kind of get you back up. And I think that's a really important skill to have as business founders and running your own businesses, because you've got to expect that there will be challenges and setbacks. Nobody's journey is perfect. And, you will come across something that will set you back or might challenge you in some way. And I really think, you can't let that derail you. You can't let a supposed rejection, sort of set you back. And it's about how you deal with those situations and sort of get back on your journey. And I think, being a founder, you've got to be able to take the risks and deal with changing outcomes, which might be, pivoting, for example, or making changes to what you offer or how you run your business. And it's, it's just general kind of dealing with the ups and downs of running a business.
Yeah. And I think, I agree. I think resilience is actually an essential part of being a business owner. And I hadn't thought about it that much until we started looking into resilience and what resilience is. But let's face it, there are so many ups and downs of running a business, whether that's, daily, sometimes hourly even, there's constantly something going on. And I think you have to have that skill in order to be able to handle those ups and downs. Why do you think it's an important skill for business founders? And obviously, with regards to our podcast, we're focusing on women of colour. So why do you think that resilience is really important?
Yeah, so I was reading up around this and doing a little bit of research, as well as drawing on my own experiences and people that I know as well. And I think it's a really interesting question to answer, because I think, resilience is a mindset potentially, and it does sort of can affect your well-being and how you think and respond to those particular situations or challenges. And that will be different depending on who you are, your background, what your mindset situation is and what your experiences have been to date. And I think when we think about women of colour, it brings in these ideas around dealing with stereotypes of what that means to be a woman of colour and what people expect us to be like. And that can be growing up, that can be through our choice of careers, that can be, our what friends and family we surround ourselves with, as well as support, network as well. I think also it taps into a bit of a subconscious bias as well in terms of, kind of how we might be seen by people around us. And that will change depending on what those environments are like. And I think for me personally, being a woman of colour, my parents are immigrants to this country, and it's been instilled in me that you've got to work hard. And I kind of do see that with some of my community as well. So I do think there is a connection there in terms of being resilient, is that you've got more to prove. I think, rather than staying in a place or environment that might be what's expected of you, what you should be doing with your life or how you're doing your life, you've also got to show those elements of resilience to go, well, actually, I don't know if that is what I want. So, and it's finding that courage and that strength to sort of find that and push through, even though that might be challenging or difficult. I also think there's an element of, lack of role models. So we've spoken about this quite a bit, haven't we? And I think that ties in a little bit of staying in what's expected of you, because, you've got to show some resilience to try and forge a new path, or a path that you haven't seen that could be a potential for you, that you would see through role models. Whereas, if you haven't got those role models or people of representation who look like you and are doing what you want to do, you might not even step into those sort of shoes or that growth or that journey, so therefore you're not putting yourself out there. You're not looking at those potential opportunities or those networks that might help you go down a different path. And I think sort of coming back to sort of what's expected of you as well, I think, there's a push, there's an element around there pushing for higher fees as well, because I did see some research, and I'll have to sort of get the numbers again, how that people of colour in general, especially women of colour, are paid a lot less than some of their other counterparts. So there's that level of expectation of what it means to be a woman of colour. So I think you have to show resilience to push through some of those stereotypes and preconceptions as well.
Yeah, I'm like nodding away here, because I think everything you've said makes sense, and I agree. I think definitely the point about facing more challenges as women of colour, I 100% agree with that. I can look at my experience in the workplace, and the pay gap, for example, impacts women of colour more than it does white women. So I think that sadly, we're facing so many more challenges in order to get ourselves to a position of power, or whatever it is that we're aiming for. There are far more barriers to break through. It's also an unequal playing field. And I think being able to understand that from the outset, I think then helps you also identify those challenges and be aware of kind of what's what you might be encountering in the future as well. I think also what you said around, the lack of role models, I think that makes a huge difference, because sometimes and we've talked about this a million times before on the podcast, but if you don't see somebody who is like you doing those things that you would like to do, it does make it that much harder, because you don't really know, you don't know like where to set the bar almost. So I think that is really, vital, having those role models. When I was kind of reading about resilience, we talked about thriving, but another phase of resilience is also the decline phase, which is where when you encounter challenges, you become unhappy. It can cause you to feel quite negative. And often we all feel that way when we encounter challenges. That's not a bad thing, but it depends, the dependency is on how long you stay in that phase. So if you're in that phase for a really, really long time, it then therefore becomes even much harder to kind of move into the next phase, I guess, of acceptance and moving on. So I think for women of colour, because of all the challenges, because of all the barriers, because of all the other things that you're facing, expectations that are put on you from society, from your family, the people around you, they expect you to maybe behave in a certain way. I think it's so much easier to almost be in that decline phase rather than kind of move out of it very quickly. So, that in itself, when I read about that, I was like, God, that's really interesting. Actually, I hadn't thought about that. But yeah, there's lots to kind of think about. So let's talk about more kind of recent examples. I know, Vardeep, you've got a really good example that you are going to share for us today.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been doing this for a while, so I'm sure both you and I have got lots of examples that we can sort of draw on. But one of my most recent ones was a pitch for a job which just happened last year. And, on paper, it was the perfect job, the perfect client, everything. It was just tick, 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 lots of boxes. Had a great initial intro call. I thought it went great, and thought, yeah, okay, brilliant. Felt really positive about this. Or, okay, yeah, I want this. This is for me, kind of went all in on that direction, and was quite positive through it. So I went through the process, because it was a pitch, it had a bit of a process aligned with it. So there were several stages of where you could ask questions. You'd have to submit your deck, and then I got shortlisted to pitch as well. So after a few, and this was over the course of about 2 to 3 months, and and even on the day of the pitch, I travelled for 6 days. And
6
in
hours.
terms of the work, prep and research, I think it took, in total, including travel, is probably about 18 to 19 hours. Wow. And, I'll be honest, I think halfway through, I started to doubt whether it was a good fit. Not that anything was wrong with that particular client or job, but there were just a few things that cropped up and that kind of just made me question it a little bit. But I was already invested in the process, and I still wanted it. I still wanted to go through with it, and still wanted to get the job if possible. So, and I also wanted the experience, so I carried on. And at the end result is I didn't get the job, and and even though I'd semi sort of prepared myself for this outcome, you still are a bit disappointed after all that work and effort and investment and time. You don't get paid for it. So that's nearly, it's nearly a week's work, isn't it? Or half a week's work, at least anyway, of that you've just given up for nothing. So it's easy to feel disheartened at the end of that, to go, I've put all that effort in, all this, and I really wanted it, and it would have been a great job to be a part of, and I didn't get it. And I think this is where the resilience kicks in. So it's very easy to then after that go, oh, do you know what? I'm never going to put myself forward again. That was just such a waste of time. I wish I hadn't done that. Why didn't I get the job? Blah, blah, blah. You can go on, or you can go, okay, I am disappointed, but it wasn't right for me. It wasn't right for them. It wasn't the best, wasn't the right fit. And that's okay. You find the skills and the thinking to go, it's all right, done, let's move on. That's it, that's done. So that's where I think the resilience helps you in terms of, I think it's external sort of skills as well as adopting a certain mindset as well. So how about you, Rupa? How do you think we can work on building resilience for ourselves?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you for sharing that experience, because I remember talking to you throughout the whole ups and downs, and you could quite easily have gone, I'm not doing this again, I'm going to get a full-time job and just work for somebody. And, that was kind of the other extreme. But I think it was really good that you identified it as a learning experience, regardless of the outcome. And actually you gave your 110% to it, and you kind of went all in. But, I think that was such a great example of what resilience is and how it can help you. Because I think if you don't have that, you could have been in a very different situation right now. You might not have even done this podcast. Who knows? So it's just, I think it's definitely helpful to share these examples, because, like you said, we all kind of go through them at differing, obviously, levels, but it's always useful. So, sorry, your question was, how can you build resilience? I think the phrase that always comes to mind when we think of resilience sometimes is, to have a thick skin. And it's something that gets bandied around a lot. Maybe you tell your children this. I know I've probably told my kids that sometimes, just, whatever people are saying to you, just grow a thick skin. But actually, I think it's misleading to kind of see resilience in that sense. I think actually it's not about growing a thick skin. It's so much more deeper than that. I think when you want to become resilient, I think it's about almost holding a mirror up to yourself and seeing you for you and what maybe you need to work on. So is it that you need to maybe be a bit more compassionate about yourself, and how can you do that? Maybe it's to appreciate the skills that you bring to your business. Maybe it's something that you've done for somebody. I don't know. It could be all manner of things, but I think inviting compassion into your life is really important. I think checking your responses, checking in and seeing kind of how you respond to things daily is also helpful. So like we said, challenges can come in all shapes and sizes. But how do you kind of respond in that moment? Is it a calm, collected kind of, okay, let's just see what's happening before I kind of react? Or do you just go in all guns blazing and then kind of have to bring yourself down from that? Again, have a look and see, and ask people around you as well, find out, what they think as well. I think that could be quite helpful. We talked about positive mindset and how to kind of develop a positive mindset. I think part of that is around practicing gratitude, and maybe it is writing down a couple of things that you're grateful for, great things that have happened in your day, just so that you're getting into that practice of actually noticing the things that happen. Because I think we're all so great at kind of doing all the good work and then moving on, and not necessarily stopping in the moment and going, oh, wow, I actually did that today. Or even the small things, I got my kids dressed and got them to school today. And, that's quite a big deal, particularly after a long Christmas break, being able to do that, show that, I guess, appreciation in yourself as well. One of the things that came up also in my reading and kind of researching resilience was this phrase, would this harm or help me? And I think that's a really good way of framing things. So when you are maybe in the heat of the moment, something's happened, can you stop for a minute and just think about what your next move is? And framing it with this question, would this help or harm me, is actually a really good way of kind of, I guess, plotting your next step, whatever that may be. Another thing that kept coming up, and I think we've again spoken about this so much within the podcast, is building a strong supportive network around you. So, keeping those people close to you who can give you support, advice, encouragement, particularly in those challenging moments, because those are your people. Those are the people that are probably going to help you bounce back quicker than if you're relying on yourself 100%. So can you find that network? Can you kind of grow that network and help you help them help you when you need it most? I think the final thing for me is looking after yourself. I think that's essential, because when you're a business owner, particularly a sole trader, the buck lands with you. So making that time for yourself, whether it's, taking time out of your day, go for a walk, write in your journal, whatever it may be, whatever brings you joy and gives you relaxation. I think having that time out of your business is really important. And again, will help you build resilience and the ability to kind of handle whatever comes your way. What about you, Vardy? What do you think are kind of ways to build resilience?
Yeah, there's some great tips that you just mentioned there, Rupa. I really believe, I agree with you on building a strong network as well. And it's just having people who've got your back. I think that makes a massive difference to your life in all areas of your life, to just know that you've got people to depend on, who can, help you when you need it, and are always there for you as well. But some of the other things that I think could be quite helpful is to just have a bit more flexibility and adaptability in your plans. I think it's really good to have the goals and the desired outcomes of certain situations or whatever it is that you're working on or doing. But it's also it's okay if that doesn't quite happen as planned, and kind of go with it a little bit as well, because life isn't fixed, things happen. So I think that helps to just be a bit more open. And I think that kind of leads into, this whole kind of idea of having a bit more of a growth and abundance mindset as well. So I think it's really good to have focus on what the end outcome, what the goal is, or what motivates you to kind of keep going. And really focus on that rather than be discouraged when you have any challenges or setbacks, because, that helps to just steer your focus and your direction that you're going. So it doesn't have to be that that's how things have to happen or that has to be the end goal. But when you stay focused on what you would like to generally be happening or going, then it just helps you to think it's okay if that thing doesn't happen because there'll be another thing, and it's like seeing speed bumps in the road. You're on this road, aren't you? And there will be speed bumps, there will be some setbacks, things that kind of, oh, that's a bit of a bump in the road, isn't it? But okay, you've done that bit now, you kind of carry on, you're still going in that direction, you're kind of looking to where you want to be. And like you've said about maintaining that positive outlook so that it kind of keeps you going, but also just acknowledging that it's okay. If we're only human at the end of the day, we're not machines or robots. So, it's about learning from those supposed failures, and I put it very loosely as failures because I don't think they are. They should be treated as learning outcomes. And then you learn from it and you move on, and it builds on your experience. So, what do you think there are any misconceptions around resilience, Rupa?
Yeah, massively. I mean, you've just mentioned a couple there, particularly around failure, which I think is sometimes unnecessarily linked to resilience, because if something doesn't go your way, doesn't mean it's a failure. But I think having that ability to then, bounce back, being adaptable to the change, I think is actually a really good thing. It's a good thing to be resilient. I think, resilience isn't a bad thing. I think actually it's a positive thing. I think from everything we've just said today, my view definitely is that it's an essential skill, particularly for a business founder and especially for a woman of colour. I think it can sometimes be misconstrued that if you are resilient, then you don't react, or you're unable to have like a bad day, or, you're unable to complain about things if things are difficult. Look, like you said, we're all human. And I think it's part of human nature. Like, we have to vent, we have to get things off our chest. I think you have to have downtime to process your emotions, of course. But again, it's about that transition from feeling like that and then moving on to the next phase. And I think the quicker you do that, the better it probably is for you and for the outcome. And resilience can help you do that. It doesn't mean that you have to be hustling 24/7 and, you're like some girl boss or whatever those awful terms are that you hear about all the time. I think it's about, acknowledging and processing your emotions in a healthy way rather than like just ignoring them. I think I read this again somewhere when I was doing my research, but empathy, understanding, and connection, those three things are all the foundation of resilience. And I couldn't agree more. I think having, those three things will help you be that much more adaptable, regardless of what happens around the corner.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree with you, just having that sort of empathy and just understanding. So rather than kind of brushing it under the carpet and not dealing with those feelings, around any kind of potential setbacks, it's acknowledging and going, all right, it's okay, I feel like that. What can I learn from it? And how can I move on? So, for me, I think, it's not a case of just like, you have to be strong and you have to find ways to just carry on regardless. No, I think you need to have some understanding as to why you feel like that. Maybe step back, give yourself a break, a bit of time out to just process, and then find the best next step for you. And that's where I think that skill set comes in, because you know what's right for you. So if you have any so-called setbacks, you know what to do and you know what's going to help you get back on that road. Do you have any experiences to share about resilience, Rupa?
Yeah, tons. I think the one that probably comes to mind is making the decision to become self-employed full time, really. So, when you were saying earlier, the challenges that we face as women of colour, that whole, work hard ethic was instilled in me from a very young age. And I think I saw that from the people around me as well. And it was, get a career, work hard, get promoted and kind of basically keep going. But that kind of career just didn't sit right with me, and it hasn't sat right with me for quite a long time. And I knew that. So when it came to making a decision about what I wanted to do next, quitting my job was kind of that top kind of, the thing that I wanted to do. And I was very focused and have been focused, I think, throughout my career. I kind of knew that it was on the cards at some point. But as I've got older, it kind of feels like, well, I need to kind of make that move now. Otherwise, when will it happen? We spoke about networks previously. My support network, the people that I hold dear and close to me, a lot of them, I would say, were probably not sure it was the right decision for me to quit. And actually, that was really tough to hear, because you want everyone to obviously agree with you because you think you're making the right decision for whatever reason. But rather than kind of take on board their views, I listened, and frankly, I put their feelings to one side. I was really clear. I knew what I wanted to do. You spoke about having goals and kind of setting outcomes earlier, Vardeep. And I think I knew ultimately that I wanted to work for myself. Look, I wanted to try it and have a go, because for the last 20 odd years, I'd worked for somebody else. I'd never really had that taste of independence. And, I kind of thought, well, why not give it a go? But I didn't want to just do it on a whim. So, I worked hard. I did all the things that I needed to do in the background in order to help me make that decision, because, I've got responsibility. So it wasn't just going to work and quit the next day. So I focused on building a plan, and everything I did was to, working towards those goals. And really the resilience kicked in because I had to really dig deep in order to achieve my outcome, essentially. I was juggling lots of different things at the time. And I remember thinking, wow, this is really difficult. And actually, even just saying that to myself was really helpful, because I acknowledged that what I was going through was really difficult. But I had this end goal in sight, and I knew that once I crossed that finishing line, or, made that decision, essentially, things were going to change. And that's why I kind of stuck with it. But during that time, I really looked after myself. I made sure I was going to the gym. I kind of did other things other than work myself to the bone, basically, because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to then, I guess, be that best version of myself to then go off and be, self-employed. So yeah, that was definitely a kind of moment in my life where I've had to experience resilience. And actually, I think it's helped me now when I think about things and I think, oh, that's a really difficult thing to do. And then I think, oh God, you did that difficult thing. Actually, it helps to then do other things in your life. So yeah, it's actually an overlooked skill, but actually I think it's actually an essential ingredient of becoming self-employed or working for yourself, definitely. And I think from researching this episode, we've learned so much. I've learned so much about resilience. One of the kind of main things that stuck out for me is that actually, challenges, adversity doesn't discriminate. I think everyone is impacted by challenges, regardless of what you see on social media, people putting up their picture perfect lives. I think everybody is impacted by challenges in some way, shape or form. But it's those people who can pick themselves up, dust themselves off. They change course if needed. They adapt, but they keep going. They're the ones that actually turn out to be successful. When you listen to all these stories about, these big entrepreneurs and kind of how they started their journey to kind of creating Amazon or Apple or, all of these, amazing brands that we have today, they've all had to change course. They've all had to adapt. And I think resilience is definitely, a key ingredient for them to do that. What about you, Vardeep? What was your kind of biggest takeaway from today's episode? We've talked a lot about resilience.
Yeah, I know. And I feel like there's even more that we could cover and talk about. But yeah, in terms of sort of takeaway, and I think I'm so with you on the social media side. And I think just generally, it's very easy to think that other people don't have any setbacks or challenges, or have got it all sorted. And, we're seeing such a small snapshot of their lives. So it's quite easy to think that other people aren't dealing with the same stuff, but we all are. And I think that was my biggest takeaway, is to just also to expect that you will have setbacks and challenges, and that everyone does have them, and that's normal. That's okay. It doesn't mean that you're not doing well because you've had a setback or a challenge. That's just part of the course. So, I think that was my biggest sort of takeaway and learning from this as well, and to know that you're kind of not alone in this journey. We're all on it together. And one of the things that that came out of the research was that 9 out of 10 entrepreneurs are set to fail, but it's having the resilience that helps them to bounce back, which is a key part of their success, which is kind of, what you've spoken about, Rupa. So yes, that wraps up the end of our episode today. And we really hope it's given you plenty of food for thought. Do keep the conversation going on Instagram. We'd love to hear your thoughts on resilience. And in the meantime, we found so many great resources, which we will be preparing for this episode. So do check out the show notes, as well as our social media. You can find us at The Courageous Collective. And thank you so much for listening and joining us, and we will see you soon. Thank you for listening to today's episode. The Courageous Collective is created by Rupa Bharadwaj and Vardeep Edwards. We really appreciate your feedback, so please like, share, and follow us. Please also subscribe to receive an alert for our next episode.
You can find out where to follow us on social media in the show notes. And if you'd like to be a future guest, please do get in touch. Thanks, and see you soon.